In today's video, we're going to be having a brief look at Calvados. What is it? How it differs from cognac. We're going to be tasting some Calvados. We're going to be tasting one brand, but 3 different bottlings. And I'm going to be showcasing how you could possibly use it. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Calvados and watch me taste 3 different Calvados from the same brand, stay tuned. Hey Brandy fans, welcome back to the channel. But for all of you that are new around these parts, hello and welcome. My name is Steve the Barman, and right here on my black channel, this is dedicated to all things brandy. Whether it's cognac, whether it's Spanish brandy, whether it's Armagnac, whether it's Pisco, whether it's Calvados, you name it, we're going to cover it. So if that sounds like fun, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But don't forget, if you want to check out my 5 other YouTube channels, they will all be linked in the description below. Now, I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into this video. But before we go any further, what is Calvados? Now, even just recently, I've heard, I thought, bearing in mind, I've been in the bar industry all my life, and I'm pretty much, I've known what Calvados is since the day dot nearly. I thought it was like a general consensus that most people understood it, but actually I find that many people don't realise that Calvados of what it is, and they just associate it with a different type of brandy. And yes, they are correct, it is a different type of brandy. But what Calvados actually is apples. It can only be made with apples, with a slight exception, which we'll come on to in a very brief second. So whereas cognac is a specific region in France, the same as Armagnac is a specific region. And if you're relating this, if you're coming over, if you're new to this, you might understand this a little bit more with Champagne, as in Champagne can only get made in the Champagne region of France. If you make a sparkling wine, even like 5 miles outside of Champagne, it can't be called a Champagne, it is a French sparkling wine. That's exactly the same with cognac. If you make a brandy outside, or if it use different grapes, for example, literally 5 miles outside of cognac, it can't be classified as a cognac. Same with the Armagnac. Armagnac have got their rules and regulations. So with Calvados, Calvados does actually have an AOC, an Appellation d'Origine de Contrôle. I can never say that properly. I can't speak French to save my life. But basically, French rules and regulations of what they can and cannot do. Calvados, as I say, can only be made from apples. It can only be made in the north of France, Normandy. But there is that little bit of exception. There is a small amount of perry, and there's a new word for you guys as well, perry, pear, essentially pear juice, pear brandy. A little bit of perry can be blended in with Calvados. Some brands use it, some don't. For example, I've got a little sample there. If you're on the blue channel, you saw me do the Master of Malt advent calendar, you would have seen that I had a brand called Don Fronte, I think it was, that actually was more pear forward than it was apple forward. So don't think that pears can't be used, but the whole thing is there is an AOC regarding Calvados. It can only be made up north in France, in Normandy. And it's not grapes, it is apples. Now, I'm not going to get too technical. That's not what this channel is about, certainly at this stage. And, even then I wouldn't understand the real intricacies of distilling. I've got to really educate myself in all this, because it is completely different to rum, to vodka and gin and all those sort of things, and whiskey. So I've really got to educate myself. But to bring this down to bare basics so you can understand it, brandy, cognac, for example, is essentially distilled wine. Okay, I think many people understand that. To get a cognac, you basically distill a wine. So you're pressing the grapes, you've got your wine, and etc., etc. With your Calvados, essentially speaking, you are distilling cider. Now, cider, again, I'm referring to the UK because cider in the US is like apple juice. In cider here in the UK is alcoholic. So in the US, you would call it hard cider. But to get your Calvados, you're essentially distilling cider in the UK, or hard cider in the US. Now, we've also got various other different types of apple brandy that I can sort of mention as well. Right here in the UK, for example, not many people know this, but Somerset cider brandy is actually has a GI, a geographical indicator, like the French version of an AOC, for example. So Somerset cider brandy does have its own rules and regulations and is recognised worldwide for what it is. And because cider at Somerset, they produce the second best cider in the UK after the Cornish. Of course they do. But that's not forgetting places like the US as well, because the US do make apple brandy as well, and it's a very famous one, Applejack. Applejack, I would say, for all intents and purposes, it is the same as Calvados and Somerset cider brandy here in the UK. But again, it will be made from very different apples, probably in very different techniques, and again, very different methods and all that. So don't expect them to taste the same. Basically, they are all made from apples. They are made from cider or hard cider. But that's where the similarities can end. As we know, to dumb this right down with wine and beer and everything like that, you know, no two beers are the same, no two wines are the same. So don't expect any two Calvados to be the same. Now, in reading up on this, I did get a little bit confused. So if it's any Calvados experts, feel free to dive in the comments below. But the rules state that they can use 4 types of apples to make their Calvados in Normandy. And this is what confused me, because I think basically those 4 types of apples kind of actually encompass most apple varieties out there. I don't know, but essentially they can use sweet apples, bittersweet apples, bitter apples, and bitter sharp apples. Now, there is one thing I know from the apple industry in the UK: the bitter sharp apples, you definitely ain't eating those. They are, you know, they aren't ever going near your mouth. They are in a whole different level of apples. So they do make some flipping good brandies and some really good cider. And the only other thing to really note at this point is, yes, you will see from this brand that they do sort of operate the same classification system as cognac, as Armagnac, and as brandy in general. You'll see, yes, I've got a fine there, but we've got a VSOP down there in a little bottle, and we've got the XO there as well. And they do operate the same sort of age statements, if you like. So the XO you can loosely sort of class as a 10-year-old, the VSOP 4-year-old, maybe 6-year-old and upwards, whereas the fine or the VS, if you like, will kind of be 2 years. And what that means is oak barrels. French limousine oak, you know, Alho, there's one for you, limousine oak barrels, but essentially French barrels, not ex-whiskey barrels, not anything like that. French limousine oak barrels is what's used to age this. Now, let's get into some side-by-side tasting, because I really can't, you know, I can't wait to do this. I haven't actually done this yet. So this is going to be brand new to me. I'm going to go up I've tasted them all individually, but never side-by-side in this. So we're going to go up the realms. Now, why have I started off with this? For 2 reasons. Firstly, again, thank you to Master of Malt for they supplied that one. I think it was the XO. No, sorry, Master of Malt sent me the fine, and I bought the XO. So thank you again. Paid promotion button will be taken to Master of Malt. Ongoing partnership over across all my channels these days with Master of Malt. So we have got that. But secondly, I've been stalking Total Wines in the US. I think that's probably the big US website that I can stalk. And actually, Berneroy, again, it's probably not how you say it. Berneroy, I can't speak French, but I'm really sorry. Let's just call it Berneroy. That's as far as I'm going to get with that. I can see it's widely available around the US. So I thought that this was a good starting point. I'm not attacking a Calvados that you cannot get across the pond in the US, which is actually my biggest audience. So in this glass, ready to go. Let's start off with the fine, this little beast. Just a little notes. I haven't done too much research, but all this is a 2-year-old Calvados, French oak barrels, and all they've got off there, also I've taken off the website. What are the 2 words? Fresh and zingy. And you know what? The best way I can describe this, and again, this won't be relatable to you guys in the US, but there's a brand, I'm going to say hard cider. I'm going to talk hard cider, but it's English cider. There's a brand in the UK. I was going to say Thatcher's. I've completely Weston's. There it is. They've got a vintage cider in a dark brown bottle, 500ml bottle. People in the UK will know exactly what I'm talking about with that. That's what it smells like. This smells like a really crisp, vibrant cider. Hard cider to you guys in the US. You know, there's no mistaking that. It's not apple juice. You know, there's a big difference between apple juice or cider to you guys in the US. There's a big difference between that and the alcoholic variety of apple juice, cider, hard cider. This is unmistakably sort of appley cider, a distilled cider, if you like. There's a little touch of oakiness on it, but not too much. It is that sort of, all it is, it's like an aged and old, if you like, cider. That's exactly what it is. Right, let's dive in for a little taste. Now, the thing I love about Calvados it does at first glimpse, like first tasting, lull you into this false sense of brandy, if you like. The very first tasting, you kind of like, oh, this is brandy. You don't mistake it for, you're not going to think it's whiskey. You're not going to think it's vodka or rum or anything like that. You are going to think brandy. But the very first taste, you get that sort of oakiness that sort of hits you, and then the apples come out. The apple, it's not like you're drinking an apple juice first off. It's kind of, the apple is there, but there in the back. This is really delicious. And I'm going to hold reserve judgment for 2 seconds because I know what's coming in here. And I'm not sure if this is something that I would actually drink neat after I've tasted this. But this is, for an entry point, this is absolutely delicious. If you like your cider / hard cider for US, you're going to flipping love this. This is delicious. Now, just moving up to the VSOP. The use case for that, I think, is going to be predominantly cocktails and mixers. I'll be honest, I flipping adore the fine. I adore it with ginger ale. Absolutely adore it. It is gorgeous. It is a stunning highball. Really, really good. Possibly one of my favorites spirit highballs, like a 2-ingredient highball, spirit and mixer. That, the fine with ginger ale, really nice, vibrant ginger ale, is stunning. Really love that. Is it a neat sipper? It's a decent price. I'm not going to be comparing prices because I've seen what you guys pay in the US. It's virtually identical prices. And you know what? There isn't much, because it's a French product, so it's getting shipped over to the US. The prices aren't going to be too dissimilar to what we pay here in the UK. But, these are all roughly bracketed around a sort of 30s, £30, 35, 36 US dollars, up to around the £50, $60 mark. So we're kind of in that bracket. Now, as I say, the fine is the 2-year-old. The VSOP actually has Calvados in it up to 8 years old. Again, aged in French Limousin. I'm just going to say, as I would do, Cornish chav, in French Limousin oak casks, but aged up to 8 years. Now, the one thing I will say off the nose is that it's much more restrained in appleness, whereas that smells like a cider / hard cider. This smells... so when I'm saying, I just want to clarify this, so for you people that are new to me, get used to this. When I say that / that, I'm talking cider UK, hard cider US, alcoholic apple juice, essentially. All right. The extra aging really tames that back. And yes, you kind of get the appliness there, but it's not apple in your face like the fine is. There's oak, there's apple. It's just a slight hint of pear there, to be fair, perry, but again, not much else from my untrained palate. Are you mistaking this for a brandy compared to a Calvados? No, I think most people would get the apples off this and think, oh, Calvados or apple brandy or something. So tasting. Now for me, this VSOP is 100% a restock. And I didn't restock it after the advent calendar that Master of Malt sent me, because I wanted to see what damage the XO did and the fine did, because I hadn't had those at this point. So I wanted to get bottles of that while I still had a little sample of this. But this, for me, is an absolute must for neat sipping. The golfing difference between the VSOP and the fine is astronomical. I'm not saying that's a bad product. I really like that. But that is more geared towards mixing for me. Whereas this is light, it's delicate, it's fresh, it's zingy. It's, if it had a touch of sugar to it, that'd be a banging apple liqueur that you would use in cocktails to really kind of bring that sort of apple, that authentic apple flavour in cocktails. It's absolutely delicious. It's a restock, and I'm gutted that this is going to be the last sort of mouthful I've got of it. For me, it's not something I often have, but something's just hitting me now. Nice cheese board. Chocolate in the evening, bar of chocolate, nice cheese board. I think cheese board. I think that with a cheese board is absolutely delicious. Now, coming on to the XO, 10 years old. But the one thing I'll try, I think I've picked out on this, I think in my broken translation of like English to French to English, I think this is aged in limousine casks again, but I think it's aged in smaller casks. And what smaller casks will do is obviously give, you know, as there's less brandy in the barrel, it's obviously more brandy is hitting, or smaller barrels, more brandy is actually in contact with the wood, if that makes sense. If you can kind of comprehend that. Whereas a larger barrel, it's more brandy in it, so not all that gets in contact with wood. With the smaller barrels, obviously more liquid comes in contact with wood. Now, what this does, this is quite fascinating for me, because this 10 years, the VSOP 8 years, although I dare say the majority of that is a lot younger, because the VSOP is 4 years, but they claim like up to 8 years in it. You do not lose the apple. The apple is, excuse me, the apple is like 100% there, is really more refined, really more drinkable. And I honestly, at this point, do not know which I prefer out of the VSOP and the XO. I don't think the oak tannins take it too far at all. I would say the VSOP, I slightly get more apple. Very, very slightly. But I don't think I could have one or the other. Because they are different. I don't think I could have the VSOP and not have the XO. And I don't think I could have the XO because I'm gutted I wouldn't have the VSOP. I really like this. And this is just, as I say, the basic, probably entry brand to Calvados. I dare say there is a damn sight better Calvados out there and apple brandies. And I'm looking forward to comparing these to the Somerset English cider brandy that we get here in the UK. I love them. I really do. This for me is a neat sipper. Maybe even an ice cube neat sipper. That kind of thing. Maybe like the whole a brandy fashioned with this. I think with that, I think you kind of lose a brandy fashioned with the VSOP. I think the VSOP is very much down the line, neat as it is. But I think the XO, I think many of you might enjoy that with a slight hint of dilution, because yes, there is that extra oak coming out of it. But God, this is tasty. So look, I've covered how you would drink it, but can you use these in cocktails? Yes. The whole point being of the 3 cocktails that I've already rocked out on this channel, the julep, the rum, the brand, I said that in the video, the brandy fashions, and the sidecar. Do you know what? You can replace brandy, cognac, the Maison Franc for you can replace the Calvados for all of those in those cocktails. Like apple and mint, we know apple and mint in the julep works so well. Now, one of my favourite whiskey juleps was actually, and yes, it was a little bit sweeter, but was the Jack Daniel's apple. So I know apple and mint in the julep works phenomenally well. So you can go down the route. I've not explored too many brandy cocktails yet, but they're the 3 biggies that I've explored, and I would quite happily put that fine. Maybe not the VSOP actually, but the fine or the XO in a lot of those cocktails. So you let me know in the comments below if you've ever had a Calvados. What has been your favourite Calvados? Do you go down the bottom end, the fine? Do you go up the top end, the XO? Do you go, and I know there's plenty out there, the Hors d'Age, you know, the beyond age and the extra old ones. Let me know your favourite Calvadoses. And I'm relating this to the US and the UK. We can pretty much get the same things because, you know, France export it. But I flipping love Calvados, and I can't wait to explore this even more.